The stars looked the same as always through the wide windows of the UES horizon. Commander Jake Peterson stood on the bridge, watching the distant lights that seemed to never change. He had been in space for 3 years now, and sometimes he wondered if they would ever find anything interesting out here. The ship moved slowly through the dark void between star systems. It was not a warship or a fighter. The U's Horizon was built for exploration, with big sensors and laboratories instead of weapons. The crew of 200 people spent their days studying rocks from dead planets and looking for signs of life that never seemed to exist. Jake walked over to the captain's chair where Captain Ryan Collins sat reading reports on his tablet. Ryan was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been commanding ships for 20 years, but this was his first deep space mission. "Anything new today?" Jake asked. Ryan shook his head. "Same as yesterday, empty space and more empty space. The science team found some interesting minerals on the last asteroid, but nothing that would change the world." Jake nodded. He understood the feeling. When Earth had built its first fleet of exploration ships, everyone had hoped they would find other civilizations quickly. Instead, they had found 12 lifeless star systems and a lot of space rocks. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Lieutenant Danny Rodriguez sat at the weapons station, though there was not much for him to do. The ship only had basic mining lasers and some small defensive systems. Dr. Lisa Martin worked at the science station, still hoping to find something that would make this trip worthwhile. Commander Peterson to the communication center came. A voice over the ship's speakers. "We have something strange here." Jake looked at Ryan, who raised an eyebrow. Strange was not a word they heard often out here. Jake left the bridge and walked through the ship's corridors to the communication center. The room was small and filled with computers and screens showing radio waves and signals from Space. Chief Communication Officer Ben Davis stood in front of a large screen with a confused look on his face. Ben was young and good with technology, but he seemed worried about something. "What do you have, Ben?" Jake asked. "Sir, we picked up a signal about an hour ago. It is not like anything we have ever seen before. The pattern is too complex to be natural, and it is definitely not from Earth." Jake felt his heart beat faster. "Are you saying this is from aliens?" "I think so, sir. But that is not the strange part. The signal seems to be directed at us, like someone is trying to talk to us specifically." Jake stared at the screen. The signal showed as a series of complex waves and patterns that meant nothing to him. "Can you understand what it says?" Ben shook his head. "Not yet. But I called Dr. Martin. She studies languages and communication. Maybe she can figure it out." Dr. Lisa Martin entered the room a few minutes later. She was a small woman with short brown hair and smart eyes. She had studied every human language and had spent years thinking about how aliens might communicate. "Show me what you have," she said. Ben played the signal through the speakers. It sounded like a mixture of music and static, with patterns that seemed to repeat. Lisa listened carefully, making notes on her tablet. "This is incredible," she said. After a few minutes, "The signal has mathematical patterns that suggest intelligence. But more than that, it seems to be trying to teach us how to understand it." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "The first part of the signal contains basic math and physics, things that any intelligent species would understand. Then it builds on that knowledge to create more complex ideas. It is like a universal translator, built into the message itself." Lisa worked for 3 hours, with Ben helping her analyze the signal. Jake went back to the bridge to tell Captain Collins what they had found. The news spread quickly through the ship, and soon everyone was talking about the alien message. When Lisa finally came to the bridge, she looked excited but also worried. She carried a tablet with her notes and translations. "Captain, I have translated part of the message. You need to hear this." Captain Collins stood up from his chair. "What does it say?" Lisa looked at her notes. "The message is a distress call. It comes from a species that calls themselves the Veltar. They are asking for help from what they call the mighty human empire." "Empire?" Jake asked. "What empire?" "That is the strange part. They seem to think we have a huge military force with hundreds of ships and powerful weapons. They say they have been listening to our radio signals and know about our great fleet. Captain Collins sat back down. But we only have 12 exploration ships, no empire, no great fleet, Lisa nodded. I know. But they are desperate. They talk about something called the swarm that is destroying their people. They believe we are their only hope. The swarm? Danny Rodriguez had been listening from his station. What kind of swarm? I am not sure yet. The translation is still rough. But it sounds like another alien species that attacks and destroys entire planets. The Veltar are running out of time. The bridge became quiet. Everyone thought about what this meant. Humanity had just received its first message from alien life, and it was a cry for help. But the aliens thought humans were something they were not. Captain, Jake said, what do we do? We cannot help them fight a war. We do not have the weapons or the ships. Captain Collins looked out at the stars. Maybe not. But we cannot just ignore them either. If there really is a species out there destroying planets, someone needs to do something. Dr. Martin continued, working on the translation. The more she understood, the more worried she became. The Veltar were not just asking for help. They were begging for it. Their message described the destruction of world after world, the death of billions of people, and the terrible approach of an enemy that could not be stopped. Captain, Lisa said, there is something else. The Veltar have included coordinates in their message. They want us to meet them at a specific location. How far away? Ryan asked. 2 weeks at maximum speed. Jake looked at the captain. Sir, we have to try. Even if we cannot help them fight, maybe we can help them escape or find another solution. Captain Collins thought for a long moment. He looked around the bridge at his crew. These were good people who had signed up to explore space and make discoveries. None of them had expected to be asked to save an alien civilization, then send a message to Earth, tell them what we found and what we plan to do. Danny, plot a course for those coordinates. Lisa, keep working on that translation. I want to know everything we can about these Veltar and their enemy. Yes, sir, they all said. As the UES Horizon changed course toward the unknown, Jake wondered what they would find when they got there. The ship had no weapons that could fight a war. The crew had no training for combat. But sometimes, he thought, the most important thing was simply to show up when someone needed help. The stars ahead looked the same as always, but now they held the promise of first contact and the weight of an impossible mission. Humanity was about to meet its first alien friends, and they were counting on help that did not exist. Image description for Leonardo AI. A futuristic spaceship bridge with large windows showing stars in space. A tall man with gray hair in a captain's uniform sits in the central chair. A younger man with short dark hair stands beside him. Other crew members work at control stations with glowing screens. The bridge has a clean white and blue design with soft lighting. Through the windows, distant stars sparkle against the black void of space. The atmosphere is serious but hopeful, with crew members focused on their important mission. The UES Horizon had been traveling for 12 days when they reached the coordinates the Veltar had sent. Captain Ryan Collins stood on the bridge, looking at the empty space around them. There was nothing visible except distant stars, but the sensors showed they were in the right place. Are you sure these are the correct coordinates? Ryan asked. Lieutenant Danny Rodriguez checked his navigation computer again. Yes, sir. This is exactly where they told us to come. Dr. Lisa Martin sat at the communication station, still working on translating more of the alien message. She had learned much more about the Veltar language in the past 2 weeks. The news was not good. Captain, she said, I have translated more of their message. The situation is worse than we thought. This enemy they call the Kethmori has destroyed 47 different worlds. They are not just conquerors. They consume entire planets. Commander Jake Peterson walked over to her station. What do you mean by consume? They eat everything? Plants, animals, even the ground itself. They turn whole worlds into breeding grounds for more of their kind. The Veltar have been running from them for 10 years. Before Ryan could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Chief Communication Officer Ben Davis looked up from his station with wide eyes. "Captain, we have incoming signals, multiple sources, they are all around us." "On screen," Ryan ordered. The main display showed space that had seemed empty moments before. Now it was filled with enormous ships that seemed to appear from nowhere. They were unlike anything humans had ever imagined. The ships looked like huge crystals or flowers, with smooth curves and no sharp edges. They glowed with soft blue light. "My God," Jake whispered. "How many are there?" "Sensors show 23 vessels," Danny reported. "The largest one is over 2 kilometers long." Ben's equipment began receiving new signals. "Captain, they are trying to communicate with us." "Put it through," Ryan said. The bridge filled with strange sounds, like music mixed with the sound of wind through trees. Then, slowly, the sounds began to change into something that sounded more like human speech. "Greetings, mighty warriors of the human empire," came a voice that sounded like it was speaking through water. "I am Ambassador Xanthara of the Veltar Collective. We have waited long for your arrival." Ryan looked at Jake, who nodded. The captain stepped forward. "This is Captain Ryan Collins of the UES Horizon. We received your distress signal and came as quickly as we could." "Captain Collins," the alien voice said, and there was relief in the tone. "Your reputation precedes you. We have listened to your broadcasts for many cycles. We know of your great battles and your powerful star destroyers. We are honored that you would come to help us in our darkest hour." Jake felt his stomach drop. The aliens thought they were from some kind of military empire. Dr. Martin had warned them about this. But hearing it directly was different. "Ambassador Xanthara," Ryan said carefully, "I think there may be some misunderstanding about our capabilities." "Ah yes, the modesty of great warriors," Xanthara replied. "We have learned from your entertainment signals that human heroes often downplay their strength. But we have seen your documentaries about space battles and planet-killing weapons. We know what your empire can do." Dr. Martin quickly typed something on her tablet and showed it to the captain. It read, "They think our movies and TV shows are real military broadcasts." Ryan closed his eyes for a moment. This was going to be complicated. "Ambassador, would it be possible for us to meet in person? Face-to-face communication might help us understand each other better." "Of course, Captain." "We will send a transport to bring you to our flagship. But please bring your military advisors. Time is running short. The Kethmori swarm will reach our homeworld in 18 of your days." 2 hours later, Ryan, Jake, Dr. Martin, and Danny were aboard a Veltar transport ship. The alien vessel was beautiful inside, with walls that seemed to be made of living crystal. Everything glowed with soft colors that changed as they moved. The Veltar who met them looked like tall, thin humans covered in scales that shimmered like pearls. They had large eyes and long fingers, and they moved with a graceful flow that reminded Jake of dancers. Ambassador Xanthara was waiting for them in a large chamber on the flagship. She was even more beautiful than the others, with scales that shifted from blue to green to gold. When she spoke, her voice was like singing, "Welcome, human warriors. I'm sorry we cannot offer you the grand reception you deserve, but our situation is desperate." "Ambassador," Ryan said, "before we discuss your situation, I need to explain something about our capabilities." "Your ship is smaller than we expected," Xanthara said. "But we understand. You have brought only a scout vessel. Your main fleet will arrive later, yes?" Jake saw Dr. Martin shake her head slightly. This was getting worse by the moment. "Ambassador," Dr. Martin said, "I think we need to clarify some things about Earth and our space capabilities." "Dr. Martin speaks wisdom," Xanthara said. "Please tell us about your fleet positions and when your destroyers will arrive." Dr. Martin took a deep breath. "Ambassador, Earth has 12 ships like ours. We are explorers, not warriors. We have no destroyers or planet-killing weapons. What you heard on our broadcasts were stories, fiction, entertainment." For a long moment, Xanthara said nothing. Her large eyes seemed to study each of the humans carefully. "I do not understand," she finally said. We have monitored your signals for many cycles. We have heard your military commanders discussing battle strategies. We have seen your weapons demonstrations. Those were movies, Jake explained. Stories. We tell for fun. They are not real. But your broadcasts about space battles, your documentaries about Star Wars, science fiction, Dr. Martin said gently. Made-up stories about imaginary futures? The color drained from Zenthara's scales, leaving them almost white. Other Veltar in the chamber began making sounds that Dr. Martin's translator could not interpret. Then you cannot help us? Zenthara asked, and her voice was filled with despair. Ryan stepped forward. We may not have the fleet you expected, but we are here. We want to help. Tell us about your enemy. Tell us about the Kethmori. Zenthara led them to a large display that showed images of space. The Kethmori are not like us. They are not individuals. They are a single mind that controls millions of bodies. They build ships from the bodies of their victims. They turn planets into nurseries for their young. The display showed horrible images of dark, twisted ships that looked like they were made of bones and flesh. Behind them came swarms of smaller creatures that moved like insects. They have no mercy, no honor, no individual thought. They exist only to consume and grow. In 18 days they will reach Veltar Prime, our homeworld. 3 billion of my people live there. Danny studied the tactical display. How many ships do they have? Our scouts report over 300 vessels in their main swarm. The largest ship, which they call the Devourer, is the size of a small moon. Jake felt sick. Even if Earth had the mighty fleet the Veltar expected, 300 ships would be a difficult fight. With just the Use Horizon, it seemed impossible. What about your own fleet? Ryan asked. We have 47 ships remaining. But we are not warriors. Our vessels are built for exploration and trade. We have some defensive weapons, but nothing that can stop the Kethmori. Dr. Martin was studying the alien displays with interest. Ambassador, your ships are much larger than ours. What kind of weapons do you have? Energy barriers for protection, plasma cutters for mining, some projectile weapons for clearing space debris. Nothing designed for war. Chief Engineer Amy Foster, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Captain, I've been looking at their ship designs. They are impressive, but they are built like our old ocean liners, big and comfortable, but not maneuverable. Ryan looked at his small crew. They had come here hoping to help, but the situation was far beyond anything they could handle. Still, he could not forget the despair in Zenthara's voice or the images of the destroyed worlds. Ambassador, he said, we may not have the fleet you expected, but we are not giving up. Our ship may be small, but we have something your people might not have considered. What is that? Experience with war. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We understand tactics, strategy, and how to fight against overwhelming odds. Zenthara's scales began to show some color again. You would stay and fight with us? Even knowing the odds? Ryan looked at Jake, who nodded. He looked at Dr. Martin and Danny, who both nodded as well. Amy Foster stepped forward. Captain, the Veltar ships have powerful engines and strong hulls. With some modifications, we might be able to turn exploration vessels into something more dangerous. Then we stay, Ryan decided. We may not be the empire you expected, but we are here. And sometimes that is enough. Image description for Leonardo AI. Inside a beautiful alien. Spaceship with walls made of living crystal that glow with soft blue and green light. A tall, graceful alien with pearl-like scales and large eyes stands facing 4 human officers in dark blue uniforms. The alien has long fingers and moves like a dancer. The chamber is large with curved walls and displays showing star maps. The lighting is soft and ethereal, creating an atmosphere of wonder mixed with tension. The humans look determined but concerned as they face their first alien contact. The war room on the Veltar flagship was filled with holographic displays showing the approaching danger. Captain Ryan Collins stood beside Ambassador Zenthara, watching the tactical screens with growing concern. The Kethmori swarm was moving faster than anyone had expected. Show me the latest scout reports, Ryan said. Xanthara touched a crystal panel, and the display changed to show a massive fleet of dark ships moving through space. At the center was something that made Ryan's blood run cold. The Devourer was enormous, a twisted mass of black metal and organic material that stretched for kilometers. Our scouts estimate it carries over 50,000 Kethmori warriors, Xanthara explained. The smaller ships each hold 1,000 more. They do not need food or rest. They do not feel fear or pain. They exist only to consume. Lieutenant Danny Rodriguez studied the formation of the enemy fleet. They are moving in a straight line directly toward your homeworld. No scouting formations, no advance guard. They seem very confident. They have reason to be, said Admiral Kethron, the Veltar fleet commander. He was older than Xanthara, with scales that had turned silver with age. In 47 battles, they have never been defeated. They simply overwhelmed their enemies with numbers. Commander Jake Peterson walked over to examine the tactical display more closely. How do they fight? What are their weapons like? Bioplasma cannons grown from the bodies of their victims, Kethron explained. Swarm missiles that think and hunt their targets, and boarding parties that can eat through ship hulls with their bare claws. Dr. Lisa Martin was working at a translation station, studying captured Kethmori communications. Captain, I have been analyzing their battle reports. They fight like insects. No individual creativity or adaptation. They use the same tactics over and over. That might be useful, Ryan said. If they never change their methods, we might be able to predict their moves. Chief Engineer Amy Foster entered the war room carrying a tablet full of technical data. Captain, I have been studying the Veltar ship designs. The good news is that their vessels are incredibly strong. The bad news is that they were built for peaceful exploration, not war. What can we do to change that? Jake asked. Amy pointed to a display showing the internal structure of a Veltar ship. Their mining plasma cutters could be modified into weapons. Their cargo bays could hold missile launchers, and their powerful engines could make them much faster than they are now. Admiral Kethron looked puzzled. But our ships are designed for safety and comfort. We cannot simply remove the gardens and living quarters. Admiral, Ryan said gently, if the Kethmori win, your people will not need gardens or comfortable quarters. They will all be dead. The old Veltara's scales turned pale, but he nodded. You are right, Captain. What do you need? Time and workers. We need to modify as many ships as possible before the swarm arrives. You will have whatever you require, Xanthara promised, over the next week. The Veltar fleet became a construction zone. Human engineers worked alongside alien technicians to transform exploration vessels into warships. The beautiful crystal gardens were replaced with weapon systems. The comfortable living spaces were filled with ammunition and supplies. Colonel Steve Barnes, the Marine commander from the UES Horizon, worked with Veltar security forces to prepare for boarding actions. The aliens had never fought in close combat before, but they were willing to learn. The Kethmori will try to board your ships, Steve explained to a group of Veltar soldiers. They are strong and fast, but they are not smart. They will come straight at you without thinking. The Veltar soldiers looked nervous. They were not natural warriors, but they understood that their families and friends were depending on them. What weapons do we have? Asked Captain Velmuth, a young Veltar officer. Plasma rifles, shock spears, and these, Steve said, holding up a simple metal rod. Sometimes the old ways work best. A good club can stop an enemy just as well as a fancy weapon. Meanwhile, Danny Rodriguez was training Veltar pilots in combat maneuvers. The aliens were excellent at flying their ships through asteroid fields and nebulae, but they had never learned to fight in space. Forget everything you know about safe flying, Danny told them. In combat, you need to be unpredictable. Change direction suddenly. Use obstacles to hide behind. Make the enemy guess what you will do next. The alien pilots practiced with their modified ships, learning to use their new weapons and tactics. It was difficult for them to think in terms of destruction rather than exploration. But they were learning. Dr. Martin made an important discovery while studying more Kethmori communications. She found Ryan in the makeshift command center they had set up. "Captain, I think I have found something important." The Kethmori communicate through bioelectrical signals. They are all connected to a central mind. What does that mean for us? Ryan asked. It means they have a weakness. If we can disrupt their communications, individual ships might become confused and unable to coordinate with the rest of the swarm. Amy Foster overheard the conversation. "Dr. Martin, what kind of signals are we talking about?" "Low frequency. Electromagnetic waves. Very specific patterns." Amy's eyes lit up. "Captain, our mining lasers can be tuned to different frequencies. If we can match the Kethmori communication frequency, we might be able to jam their signals." "How long would you need to modify the equipment?" Ryan asked. 2 days, maybe 3 if we want to do it right." "You have 1 day," Ryan said. "The swarm will be here in 6 days." As the deadline approached, more bad news arrived. Scout ships reported that the Kethmori had split their fleet. A smaller group was moving toward the Veltar colonies on the outer worlds, while the main force continued toward the homeworld. "They mean to destroy everything," Xanthara said sadly. "Not just our homeworld, but all our people everywhere." "How many people are on those outer colonies?" Jake asked. "Nearly 1 million, Admiral Catherine replied. "We do not have enough ships to defend both the homeworld and the colonies." Ryan stared at the tactical display, trying to find a solution that did not exist. The Veltar fleet, even with modifications, was no match for the Kethmori swarm. They could not be in 2 places. "At once, Captain," Dr. Martin said quietly. "I sent that message to Earth 2 weeks ago. Even if they received it and sent help immediately, the nearest Earthship is still days away." "And even if they come, what could they do?" Danny added. "We have 12 exploration ships total. The Kethmori have 300 warships." Night, Ryan stood alone in the observation deck of the Veltar flagship, looking out at the stars. The beautiful alien ship was now filled with weapons and soldiers, preparing for a battle they could not win. He thought about the billions of Veltar who were counting on them, and the impossible odds they faced. Jake found him there an hour later. "Captain, the modifications are nearly complete. Amy thinks she can have the communication jammer ready in time." "That is good news," Ryan said, but his voice was flat. "Sir, are you having second thoughts?" Ryan was quiet for a long moment. "Jake, we are about to lead these people into a battle against an enemy that has never been defeated. We are going to watch good people die because we gave them hope we cannot deliver. Captain, respectfully, that is not true. We gave them something they did not have before." "What is that?" A chance. Maybe a small chance, but still a chance. Before we arrived, they were just running away, waiting to die. Now they are preparing to fight." Ryan looked at the stars again. "Is that enough?" "It has to be, sir. It is all we have." The next morning brought the final scout report. The Kethmori main fleet would arrive in 18 hours. The smaller force, attacking the colonies, would reach their targets at the same time. "Admiral Kethron," Ryan said, "we need to make a decision. Do we split our forces and try to defend both targets, or do we concentrate everything on one battle?" The old Veltar commander looked tired. "What do you recommend, Captain?" "We make our stand at the homeworld. If we win there, we can rescue the colonies. If we lose, it will not matter anyway. And if we lose at the homeworld, 3 billion. People die instead of 1 million. "Yes," Ryan said simply. "But if we split our forces, we lose everywhere." Xanthara stepped forward. "Captain Collins, you have given us more hope than we have had in years. We will follow your judgment." The order went out to the Veltar fleet. All ships would concentrate at the homeworld for the final battle. The modified vessels took their positions. Weapons charged and crews ready, Ryan stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, now serving as the command ship for the combined fleet. Through the view screen he could see the Veltar homeworld, a beautiful blue and green planet surrounded by orbital cities and space stations. "Captain," Ben Davis called from the communication station, "I am picking up long-range sensors. The Kethmori swarm is entering the system, Put it on screen. The display filled with darkness. Hundreds of twisted ships emerged from the void, led by the massive Devourer. They moved in perfect formation like a plague of insects descending on a garden. All ships, this is Captain Collins, Ryan said into the communication system. Today, we make our stand. Today we fight for the future of the Veltar people and for the idea that good can triumph over evil. Remember your training, trust your teammates, and do not give up hope. The UES Horizon floated beside the massive Veltar flagship as final preparations began. Captain Ryan Collins watched through the viewscreen as alien workers made last-minute modifications to their ships. The beautiful exploration vessels now bristled with improvised weapons and armor plating. Chief Engineer Amy Foster wiped sweat from her forehead as she finished, installing the communication jammer in the Horizon's main deflector array. Captain, the jammer is ready. We can disrupt Kethmori communications in a 3-kilometer radius, but we have to be close to their ships for it to work. How close? Commander Jake Peterson asked. Dangerously close, Amy replied. We will be well within range of their weapons. Dr. Lisa Martin looked up from her translation station. I have more information about Kethmori battle tactics. They always begin with long-range bombardment, then move in for close combat. The good news is they are predictable. The bad news is their weapons are much more powerful than ours. Admiral Kethrin entered the bridge of the Horizon, his silver scales dim with worry. Captain Collins, our fleet is ready, but I must ask you again, are you certain about this plan? We have 47 ships against their 300. Admiral, sometimes numbers are not everything, Ryan said. Your people have something the Kethmori do not understand. What is that? The ability to adapt. The Kethmori have used the same tactics for decades because they always worked. Today, we are going to show them something new. Lieutenant Danny Rodriguez was studying the formation of approaching enemy ships on his tactical display. Captain, they are maintaining their standard attack pattern. A wall of smaller ships in front, with the Devourer in the center of the formation. Perfect, Ryan said. They are doing exactly what we expected. Danny, signal the fleet. Execute Formation Alpha. The Veltar ships began moving into position. Instead of forming a traditional battle line, they spread out in a complex pattern. That looked random, but was carefully planned. Small groups of ships hid behind asteroids and space debris. Others positioned themselves above and below the main battle area. Colonel Steve Barnes stood in the Marine-ready room, addressing a mixed group of human and Veltar soldiers. Remember, if they board our ships, do not try to fight them one-on-one. Work in teams. Use the ship's layout to your advantage. Make them come to you through narrow corridors where their numbers do not matter. Sergeant Kate Miller checked her weapon and looked at the alien soldiers around her. Stay calm, follow your training, and watch out for each other. We may look different, but we are all fighting for the same thing. The Veltar soldiers nodded, nervously. They had trained hard for the past week, but none of them had ever been in real combat. Their large eyes showed fear, but also determination. On the bridge, Communications Officer Ben Davis received a message from the Veltar homeworld. Captain, the Planetary Defense Coordinator is asking about evacuation plans. Tell them to prepare. The shelters, but no evacuation, Ryan replied. If we lose here, there is nowhere to run. Ambassador Zenthara had remained on the flagship to coordinate with the civilian population. Her voice came over the communication system. Captain Collins, 3 billion people are watching the sky tonight. They know their fate depends on this battle. We will not let them down, Ryan promised. Though he was not sure how they could possibly win, Amy Foster made final adjustments to the modified weapon systems. The Veltar plasma mining tools had been reconfigured as military weapons, but they were still not designed for ship-to-ship combat. Captain, our new weapons will work, but they need time to recharge between shots. We cannot sustain a long firefight. Then, we make every shot count. Jake said. Dr. Martin had been working with the Veltar science team to understand more about Kethmori technology. Captain, I think I know why they have never been defeated. Their ships can repair themselves during battle. They use the destroyed remains of enemy vessels to grow new armor and weapons. That explains why they get stronger as fights go on, Danny observed. How do we stop something that can repair itself? By not giving it time to heal, Ryan said. We hit them hard and fast, then get out before they can recover. The first sensor contacts appeared on the long-range scanners. The Kethmori swarm was entering the outer system, moving steadily toward the homeworld. The Devourer was clearly visible at the center, a dark mass that seemed to swallow light itself. All ships, this is Admiral Kethron, came the voiceover. The fleet communication channel. Take your positions according to the human tactical plan. Today we fight not just for survival, but for the right of peaceful people to exist in this galaxy. Ryan activated the ship-wide communication system. Attention all crew members. In a few hours we will face an enemy that has destroyed 47 civilizations. They think we are just another weak species that will run or surrender. They are wrong. Today they learn that humans do not give up, and neither do our friends. The crew of the Horizon moved to their battle stations. The ship might be small compared to the Veltar vessels, but it was now the command center for the entire defense. Ryan felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Jake checked the tactical displays one more time. Captain, enemy formation is holding steady. They will be in weapons range in 2 hours. Denny, are our modified weapons online? Yes, sir. All systems show green. Amy, what about the communication jammer? Ready to deploy on your command, Captain. Dr. Martin looked up from her analysis of enemy communications. Captain, they are broadcasting on all frequencies. The same message over and over. What does it say? Surrender now and your death will be quick. Ryan smiled grimly. Send a reply? What should I tell them? Tell them humanity says no. The message went out across space, transmitted in the Kethmori's own language. For the first time in their existence, someone had refused their demand for surrender. On the Kethmori command ship, confusion rippled through the hive mind in 47. Previous battles, no species had ever refused to surrender when faced with the full swarm. The human response did not fit any of their programmed responses. Captain, Ben reported, the enemy formation is changing. They are moving faster now. They are angry, Dr. Martin observed. Our refusal has upset their plans. Good, Ryan said. Angry enemies make mistakes. The modified Veltar ships took their final positions. Captain Velmuth commanded a group of fast attack vessels hidden behind the largest asteroid in the system. His ships were armed with the new plasma weapons, and had been stripped of everything unnecessary to make them faster. This is Velmuth to all attack groups, he said over the tactical channel. Remember, we strike fast and disappear. Do not try to fight them directly. Similar groups of ships waited throughout the system, ready to spring the trap that Ryan and the Veltar commanders had planned. It was desperate and risky, but it was their only chance. Amy finished the last system checks. Captain, all modifications are complete. The ships are as ready as we can make them. What about our own defenses? The Horizon's shields are at maximum, and I have rerouted power from non-essential systems to weapons and engines. We can take some punishment, but not much, Ryan nodded. The small human ship would be the most vulnerable vessel in the coming battle, but it was also the most important. Without the communication jammer, their plan would fail. Jake studied the approaching swarm through the tactical sensors. Captain, I count 312 enemy vessels. The Devourer is approximately 50 kilometers long and 30 kilometers wide. How does something that big even move? Amy wondered. Very slowly, Danny replied. That might be our advantage. Dr. Martin had been monitoring Kethmori communications. Captain, they are discussing battle formations. They seem confident this will be another easy victory. Let them think that, Ryan said. Overconfidence has been the downfall of many armies. The final hour before battle began was quiet on the bridge. Each crew member checked their equipment and thought about what was coming. They all knew the odds were against them, but none of them suggested retreat. Captain, Jake said quietly, Win or lose, I want you to know it has been an honor serving with you. Same here, Jake. Same here. As the enemy fleet moved closer, Ryan thought about Earth, so far away. By the time anyone there learned about this battle, it would be long over. The 12 exploration ships of humanity's space fleet would either be remembered as heroes or forgotten as casualties in a war no one on Earth even knew was happening. Captain, Ben announced, enemy fleet will be in long-range weapons range in 15 minutes. Signal all ships, Ryan ordered. This is it. Remember the plan, trust your training, and fight for each other. Throughout the system, Veltar crews took their positions at weapons and engines they barely understood. Human advisors stood beside alien commanders, ready to guide them through their first real battle. The beautiful homeworld of the Veltar hung in space below them, unaware that its fate would be decided in the next few hours. 3 billion people went about their lives, trusting that somehow their protectors would find a way to save them. In the distance, the Kethmori swarm advanced like a dark tide, confident in another easy conquest. They had no idea they were about to face something that had never appeared in their calculations: human stubbornness combined with alien technology and desperate courage. The first shots of the battle came from the Kethmori swarm as they entered weapons range. Dark energy beams lanced through space, striking the empty positions where the Veltar fleet should have been. The enemy had expected to find ships lined up in traditional formation, ready for a straightforward fight. Instead, they found nothing. Captain Ryan Collins watched from the bridge of the UES horizon as confusion rippled through the Kethmori ranks. Their perfect formation wavered as individual ships searched for targets that were not where they expected them to be. Now, Ryan said quietly into his communication device all around the system, Veltar ships emerged from hiding spots behind asteroids and debris fields. Captain Velmuth led the first attack group, his modified vessels screaming out of concealment at maximum speed. Their new plasma weapons lit up space as they struck the surprised enemy flanks. Direct hits on 3 enemy vessels, Lieutenant Danny Rodriguez reported from his tactical station. The Kethmori are trying to turn to face the new threat. But before they could react properly, Velmuth's ships were already gone, disappearing back into the asteroid field. The hit-and-run tactics that humans had taught them were working perfectly. The Kethmori tried to pursue, but their larger ships were too slow. As they chased one group of attackers, another group struck from a different direction. The organized enemy formation began to break apart as individual ships moved to counter threats that vanished before they could be engaged. Their formation is collapsing, Commander Jake Peterson observed. They do not know how to handle this kind of fighting. Dr. Lisa Martin monitored enemy communications from her station. Captain, the Kethmori are broadcasting confusion signals. They keep asking their central mind for new orders. Perfect, Ryan said. Amy, activate the communication jammer. Chief Engineer Amy Foster pressed a series of controls, and the Horizon's modified deflector array began broadcasting interference on the Kethmori communication frequencies. Immediately, the effect was visible. Enemy ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly began acting independently. It is working, Dr. Martin reported excitedly. The ships closest to us have lost contact with the hive mind. They are just floating there, not sure what to do. But the victory was short-lived. The massive devourer at the center of the enemy formation began moving forward, its enormous bulk bristling with weapons. As it approached, more and more Kethmori ships came back under central control. The devourer has its own communication array, Amy realized. Our jammer cannot reach ships that are close to it. Admiral Kethron's voice came over the fleet communication channel. All ships, concentrate fire on the devourer. We must destroy their command ship. The Veltar vessels emerged from hiding and began a coordinated assault on the massive enemy vessel. Their modified plasma weapons struck the devourer's hull, causing explosions and fires across its surface. For a moment, it seemed like they might actually damage the giant ship. Then the devourer returned fire. The giant ship's weapons were unlike anything the defenders had seen. Bioplasma cannons fired streams of living energy that seemed to hunt their targets. Swarm missiles launched in clouds, each one guided by its own primitive intelligence. Evasive maneuvers, Ryan ordered as a swarm of missiles locked onto the horizon. The small human ship twisted and turned through space, its superior maneuverability keeping it ahead of the pursuing weapons. But the larger Veltar vessels were not so lucky. 3 ships were destroyed in the first exchange, their beautiful crystal hulls shattered by the alien weapons. "We cannot fight that thing directly," Jake said, watching the tactical display. "It is too big and too heavily armed." Ryan studied the enemy formation, looking for weaknesses. The Devourer was huge and powerful, but it was also slow. More importantly, it seemed to be the key to the entire Kethmori communication network. "Danny, can you get us close to that ship without being destroyed?" "How close, sir?" "Close enough to use the communication jammer at full power." Danny looked at the tactical display and swallowed hard. "Sir, we would have to fly right up to its hull. We would be in range of every weapon it has. Can you do it?" "Yes, sir, but we probably will not survive the trip." Ryan looked around the bridge at his crew. They all knew what he was asking of them. Amy nodded from her engineering station. Dr. Martin gave him a thumbs up. Ben Davis grinned and said, "Let us go save some aliens." "Signal Admiral Kethron," Ryan ordered. "Tell him to concentrate all remaining ships on covering our approach." The Veltar fleet formed up around the tiny horizon, their larger ships trying to shield it from enemy fire. Together, they began a desperate charge toward the Devourer. The massive ship responded by focusing all its weapons on the approaching threat. Space filled with energy beams and swarm missiles as the Kethmori tried to stop the advancing ships. Shields down to 60%, Amy reported as the ship shook under enemy fire. "Hull breach on deck 3, called out damage control teams. "Keep going," Ryan ordered. Around them, Veltar ships sacrificed themselves to protect the horizon's approach. Captain Velmuth's vessel took a direct hit from a bioplasma cannon, but not before launching one final attack that cleared a path through the enemy defenses. 5 kilometers from the Devourer, Danny announced. "Amy, maximum power to the jammer." Ryan ordered. The communication jammer reached full power, broadcasting interference across a wide area. Immediately, dozens of Kethmori ships lost contact with the central mind. They began drifting aimlessly or firing at random targets, including each other. "It is working," Dr. Martin shouted over the noise of weapons fire. "The entire enemy formation is breaking apart," but the Devourer was not finished. The massive ship began launching boarding pods directly at the ships closest to it. The organic projectiles smashed through hull armor and released swarms of Kethmori warriors inside the defending vessels. "We have boarders on the flagship," came Admiral Kethron's voice over the communication channel. Colonel Steve Barnes grabbed his weapon and headed for the airlock. "Jake, I am taking a team to help the Admiral." "Steve, you cannot get there through." "Oh, that weapon's fire. Watch me." Steve and a team of Marines used the ship's shuttlecraft to transfer to the Veltar flagship. They arrived just as Kethmori warriors were breaking through the ship's internal defenses. The aliens were everything the intelligence reports had described. They looked like a cross between insects and machines, with razor-sharp claws and armor that seemed to be grown rather than built. They moved with frightening speed and showed no fear of death, but Steve and his Marines had something the Kethmori had never faced before: human close combat experience. They used the ship's corridors and passages to channel the enemy into kill zones, fighting with a combination of high technology and primitive tactics that confused the hive-minded warriors. Sergeant Kate Miller led a team of Veltar soldiers in a counterattack that pushed the boarders back toward their entry point. "Remember your training," she shouted to the alien soldiers. "Work together, watch your corners, and do not let them surround you." Meanwhile, the space battle continued to rage around the Devourer. The communication jammer was working, but the giant ship itself seemed immune to the interference. Its bioweapons continued to tear through the defending fleet. "Captain," Amy called out, "I am reading massive energy buildup in the Devourer's core." "I think it is preparing some kind of superweapon," Ryan looked at the tactical display. If the Devourer used a planet-killing weapon, the battle would be over regardless of what happened to the smaller ships. How long until it fires? Maybe 5 minutes. Danny, can you get us inside that ship? Sir, you mean actually inside the Devourer? That is exactly what I mean. If we can get to their central mind, maybe we can shut down the whole swarm. Danny studied the massive ship on his display. There, sir. That looks like a docking bay. If I can thread us through their weapons fire? Do it! The Horizon broke away from the main battle and made a desperate dash toward the Devourer's hull. Enemy weapons tracked them every meter of the way, but Danny's piloting skills kept them ahead of the targeting systems. Brace for impact. Danny warned as he aimed the ship at what looked like an opening in the giant vessel's side. The Horizon smashed through the biomechanical barriers and came to rest inside the Devourer's docking bay. Emergency lights flickered on, revealing a vast space filled with organic machinery and pools of strange liquid. Life support shows the air is breathable but toxic, Dr. Martin reported. We will need breathing gear. Arm yourselves, Ryan ordered. We are going to find their central mind and shut it down. As the crew prepared to leave their ship, Ryan looked back at the tactical display showing the battle outside. The Veltar fleet was fighting bravely, but they were losing. Everything now depended on what happened inside the Devourer. The small human crew, armed with basic weapons and determination, prepared to face the heart of an alien hive mind that had conquered 47 civilizations. Outside, the superweapon continued to charge, preparing to end the battle forever. Image description for Leonardo AI. A massive space battle scene with hundreds of ships fighting around an enormous biomechanical alien vessel the size of a moon. Inside the Devourer, the air smelled like death and decay. Captain Ryan Collins led his small team through corridors that seemed to be alive, with walls that pulsed like a heartbeat. The organic passages were lit by bioluminescent patches that gave off an eerie green glow. Stay close together, Ryan whispered to his crew. We do not know what defenses this ship has. Commander Jake Peterson carried a plasma rifle that Amy Foster had modified with Veltar technology. Dr. Lisa Martin held a scanner that was trying to map the ship's layout, while Chief Engineer Amy Foster monitored their communication jammer to make sure it kept working. Captain, Dr. Martin said quietly, my scanner shows a massive chamber about half a kilometer ahead. The energy readings suggest it might be their central command. As they moved deeper into the ship, they began to see Kathmori creatures moving through the passages. The aliens looked even more terrifying up close, with their combination of insect and machine features. But strangely, none of them seemed to notice the human intruders. They are acting like we are not here, Jake observed. The communication jammer, Amy realized. It is not just blocking their signals. It is making them ignore anything that does not fit their programmed behavior. They reached the edge of the central chamber and looked down into a vast space filled with organic machinery. At the center was something that made them all stop and stare. A massive brain, easily 50 meters across, floated in a tank of glowing liquid. Thousands of cables connected it to every part of the ship. That is their central mind, Dr. Martin breathed. It controls everything. Around the brain chamber, hundreds of Kathmori creatures worked at stations that seemed to grow from the floor. They moved with mechanical precision, following orders from the giant brain without question. How do we destroy something that big? Jake asked. Amy studied the setup with her engineering scanner. Captain, I do not think we need to destroy it. Look at those power conduits. If we can overload the system, we might be able to shut down the whole network. How long would that take? 10 minutes, maybe 15 if I do it carefully. Ryan looked at the hundreds of enemy creatures below them. You will not have 15 minutes once they notice us. Then we make sure they stay distracted, Jake said. Checking his weapon, before Ryan could stop him, Jake jumped down into the chamber and opened fire on the nearest group of Kathmori. His plasma rifle cut through their ranks, but more creatures immediately moved to attack him. Jake, you idiot, Ryan muttered, then followed his friend into the battle. The chamber erupted in chaos as the human crew fought against overwhelming numbers. The Kethmori were fast and strong, but they attacked in predictable patterns that made them easier to fight than expected. Amy worked frantically at the power conduits while her crewmates held off the enemy. "Almost there," she called out. "Just a few more minutes." Dr. Martin used her scanner to find weak points in the chamber's defenses. "Captain, there are explosive charges built into the walls. If we can trigger them, we can bring down the whole chamber." "Do it," Ryan ordered, firing at a group of creatures trying to reach Amy's position outside the Devourer. The space battle was reaching its climax. The Veltar fleet was down to 20 ships, but they were still fighting. Admiral Kethron had organized the survivors into a defensive formation around the homeworld. "Admiral," came a report from one of his ships, "the Devourer's superweapon is almost ready to fire." Kethron looked at the tactical display showing the massive energy buildup in the enemy ship. In less than 5 minutes it would unleash enough power to destroy their homeworld and everything on it? "All ships maximum attack on the Devourer," he ordered. "We must stop that weapon." The remaining Veltar vessels threw everything they had at the giant ship, but their weapons barely scratched its massive hull. The superweapon continued to charge, preparing to end the battle forever. Then something unexpected appeared on the long-range sensors. "Admiral," his communication officer reported, "I am detecting new ships entering the system. They are not Kethmori." On the display, a fleet of 12 ships emerged from hyperspace. They were not the mighty star destroyers the Veltar had hoped for, but simple human exploration vessels like the Horizon. Leading them was a slightly larger ship with the name Enterprise painted on its hull. "This is Admiral Jack Morrison of the Earth Fleet," came a transmission. "Sorry we are late to the party. What do you need us to do?" Admiral Kethron felt hope surge through his old heart. The human reinforcements were small and lightly armed, but they represented something the Kethmori had never faced: the determination of an entire species to help their friends. "Admiral Morrison, we need you to help us stop that super weapon." "Understood. All Earthships, attack formation Alpha. Let us show these bugs how humans fight." The Earth fleet might have been small, but they brought with them the tactical knowledge of centuries of human warfare. They moved in coordinated patterns that confused the remaining Kethmori ships, striking at weak points and disappearing before the enemy could respond. Inside the Devourer, Amy finished her work on the power conduits. "Captain, it is done. When I activate this, the whole ship will lose power." "What about us?" Jake asked, still fighting off attacking creatures. "We run very fast toward the exit," Amy said with a grin. Dr. Martin triggered the explosive charges she had found, and the chamber began to collapse around them. The giant brain in its tank cracked and began to leak glowing fluid. "Now, Amy!" Ryan shouted. Amy activated the overload sequence, and immediately the lights throughout the chamber began to flicker and die. The Kethmori creatures stopped moving. As their connection to the central mind was severed, the human crew ran through the collapsing passages as the Devourer began to shut down around them. Behind them, the central brain died, taking with it the coordination of the entire swarm. They reached the horizon just as the ship's systems failed completely. Danny Rodriguez had the engines ready, and they blasted out of the dying ship into open space outside. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every Kethmori ship in the swarm stopped moving as their connection to the central mind was cut. Without orders, they began to drift aimlessly or attack each other in confusion. "The swarm is breaking apart," Admiral Kethron reported with amazement. "They are completely disorganized." The combined human and Veltar fleets moved in to finish off the confused enemy ships. Without their central coordination, the Kethmori were no match for organized opponents. The Devourer itself began to break apart as its biological systems failed. The massive ship that had terrorized 47 civilizations was dying, its super weapon never having had the chance to fire. "Admiral Morrison to all ships," came the transmission from the Earth Fleet commander. "Excellent work, everyone. I think we just made some new friends." 3 days later, Captain Ryan Collins stood on the observation deck of the repaired Veltar flagship, looking out at the beautiful homeworld below. The planet was safe, its 3 billion people saved from a fate worse than death. Ambassador Zenthara joined him at the viewing window. Her scales had returned to their normal beautiful colors, and she seemed younger somehow. "Captain Collins," she said, "my people owe you a debt we can never repay. You came to help us even though we were not the empire we claimed to be." "You were wrong about us too," Ryan pointed out. "We are not the mighty empire you thought we were. No, you are something better. You are people who fight for what is right, even when the odds are impossible." Dr. Martin approached them, carrying a data tablet. "Captain, I have been studying the Kethmori ships we captured. Their technology could be very useful for defense against other threats." "Other threats?" Ryan asked. "The galaxy is a big place," Zenthara said. "The Kethmori were not the only dangerous species out there, but now we have something we never had before." "What is that?" "Friends who know how to fight." Admiral Jack Morrison walked over to join the conversation. "Captain Collins, I have been talking with the Earth government. They want to establish a permanent presence out here. A joint fleet with the Veltar to protect this region of space." Ryan smiled. "A few weeks ago, we were just explorers looking for rocks and empty planets. Now we are guardians of the galaxy." "Not guardians," Zenthara corrected. "Partners. The Veltar have much to learn from humans about courage and creativity. But humans have much to learn from us about science and technology." Jake Peterson joined the group at the window. "Captain, the new ships are ready for their first patrol. Half human crews, half Veltar. It is going to be interesting." Ryan looked out at the mixed fleet floating in space around the homeworld. Human exploration ships had been modified with Veltar technology, while Veltar vessels now carried human weapons and tactical systems. "You know," he said, "when the Veltar sent that first distress signal, they were looking for a mighty empire. That did not exist. But in a way," Dr. Martin added, "they found exactly what they were looking for." "How so?" "They found people who would come when called. People who would fight impossible odds to help strangers. People who would sacrifice everything for what is right." Admiral Morrison nodded. "The fleet they called for help was never about the number of ships or the power of weapons. It was about the willingness to stand up to evil."